Hello and welcome to the Dr. Kirsten Show. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritzen. And today I wanted to talk about if you feel like you're somebody who has been doing everything right and trying to heal, there are some five truths that might be a little harsh, but also very important that may unlock part of the journey for you and the next phase of where you need to look. So, if you are someone who continues to have a flare up of your symptoms like autoimmune disease, chronic illness, chronic symptoms like maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's migraines, maybe it's like endometriosis pain, PCOS, maybe it's GI symptoms like chronic constipation or loose stools, maybe it's chronic pain, tension or tightness in your back or your muscles or your joints. These are all brain fog. These are all depression, anxiety. These are all different symptoms, chronic symptoms that can flare up. And again, we're not necessarily looking here at like a chronic or an acute thing, but really looking at things that are sticking around for a really long time and not really going away, and likely because of a deeper, like inflammatory process that's going on that needs to be addressed. So if you're still having those kinds of flare-ups and you're just tired and exhausted, maybe you're also burned out from like doing everything and trying to do everything right. Um, one of these truths might be why. And one of the things that I think is really important to start off with when we have this conversation is that while I do think that a lot of the like habit changes that need to happen can be challenging to make, eventually they do become second nature and kind of just a part of who you are and like your identity and what you do. So eating healthy, moving your body, reducing stress, like a lot of those things, and reducing your toxin exposure to a certain extent, is it all of those things, getting enough sunlight, resting, they become a part of your just daily routine, right? But I do actually think that, and we can make habit change a whole lot easier because usually why people struggle to make those habit changes is because there's something else going on that is, kind of preventing you from making those shifts and changes. Habits, uh, can actually be quite a bit easier to change when you just have some specific tools to help you get there. And one of my favorite books is the Atomic Habits. That book has so many key like perspective shifts around habits as well as very applicable tools for changing your habits. I do really think that when you change your habits, it does help you change your life. Absolutely. We're also going to talk about some areas where you might be doing everything right as far as habits go, and things still aren't quite moving for you. So in that sense, I think the way that I tend to look at this is that like a lot of people, I think that like taking supplements and even like making some of those nutrition changes and lifestyle changes, I actually think a lot of that medications is really on the easier part. I think facing the like trauma responses, the default patterns, the conditioning, the programming, the deeper wounds, deeper areas where we tend to move and try to avoid and try to get into patterns to fix things and keep in the doing to avoid those things. I think that's actually the harder part. So, I'm gonna name all the five truths that I have today, harsh truths, and then I want to kind of dig into each of them. So, the first one is that you can't supplement your way out of a trauma response. Number two is that doing everything right often comes from survival mode. Number three, if you hate your body, it won't feel safe enough to heal. Number four, healing requires grieving who you had to be to survive. And number five, autoimmune flares are often your body saying, this isn't working anymore. And that could be any chronic symptom, could be saying, this isn't working anymore. And that can go even into not just autoimmune disease, but that can go into cancers. It can go into all of these different um, like health conditions that we can have. So let's dig in to each one. So you can't supplement your way out of a trauma response. This one maybe doesn't need too much time. I think it's pretty darn self-explanatory, but the this is where I find people will say, like, I've tried all the protocols, I've done all of the things that doctors have suggested, I've done all of the functional labs, and just things are just not they're just not working, right? They're not moving in the right direction. And that's usually when I say, okay, it is time to look a little bit deeper, because most likely what's happening here is there are things that are happening underneath the surface that are preventing those things from working. So when you change the internal map, the internal representation of the subconscious mind to healing through that trauma response to now have a different automatic response, then the supplements oftentimes will start working a lot better. Also, if there are parts of us that are in conflict, what can happen is when we integrate those parts and we become more whole, we feel less fragmented. The supplements, medications, those oftentimes start to work better. So if you are finding that you're doing a lot of the things right and you're still feeling like maybe you've even done some of the mindset work, and maybe you've even spent even time working with me or with things like people like me, that therapists, et cetera, that really help you um, look at those deeper layers, it's possible that there's still more work to do. And only you are going to know that, and you're going to know it by your gut feeling, right? Like you may have a gut response of like, but how much more time is there going to be? Like, how much more work am I going to have to do here? And if you get that sense of like, there's more work to do, there's more work to do, right? So sometimes whether we like it or not, right? But anyway, you can't supplement your way out of a trauma response, I think is such a great way to basically say, like, you can literally be doing all of the things right, but if your nervous system doesn't feel safe, then that needs to be addressed. And sometimes that can be actually helping you feel safe in your body, even when you have a lot of like chronic stuff going on. And I'm brushing over that, but like, for some people, that I've worked with, they struggle to move, they struggle to walk, they struggle to, do some of like the day-to-day functions. So this is not just like little stuff, right? This is for some people, it's really, really, really big, and it is a huge part of their life and being able to function in life. Um, and again, if your body doesn't feel safe either in itself or in its environment, like we got to make some shifts, right? That's a first place to start. So the second one, so doing everything right, and that often coming from survival mode. This one actually goes quite a bit deeper, and for some people, it's maybe not where you're going to start, but you'll get there eventually. Like, I think for a lot of people on this journey, they usually start along the lines of like, I'm worthy and I'm capable and I'm enough. That tends to be where people begin, because you have to believe that you both are worthy and deserve to have the thing that you want, and that you also are capable of having it. And until you actually believe to your core that it is possible for you, it's going to be really hard to create it in the physical world, in this 3D world, right? Until you actually believe that it is possible for you. So, whatever you have to do to shift that identity to believing that anything is possible and that it is possible for you, that's usually where people begin. And that's usually where we start inside of most of my programs, my deep dives, is we start with under figuring out, is it whether you don't believe that you're capable or that you don't believe that you are worthy or deserving to have what you want. And so that's where we begin. But then it will step by step, right? As we start going through the layers, eventually where people do tend to end up is that, especially, and it goes many different directions. I'm not saying that everybody goes this way, okay? But one of the things that direction that it may go is that you notice that you feel like you have to do everything right. Otherwise, you won't get what you want. That comes a little bit from perfectionism, comes a little bit from like a belief usually that like you need to do everything right or do everything perfectly in order to receive a need. like a big need. So inside of I've revamped it now, but it used to be called Worthy. And inside of that program, um, I talked a lot about meeting your own needs and why that is so important and healing where those needs weren't met. And these are the big ones, like needing to be loved, needing to feel connected and that you belong, needing to feel that you are important and that you are significant and that someone's proud of you or that you are proud of you, the that you are worthy, that you are enough, that you are capable. These are big truths. Unconditionally loved. These are very, very big truths that people need to have. And when we're kids, we sometimes don't get them. Now, again, we're not faulting our parents. It just is what it is. And I personally prefer to look at it as our parents were doing the best that they could with the tools that they have. And I prefer to say that for myself as well because I am not perfect. And for my kids as well, like it's one of those things. Doing the best I can with the tools that I have, right? So that's how I prefer to look at the world. Does that fit for everyone? No. Are there situations where that may not fit? Sure, absolutely. And that's how I prefer to see it. So, all of that being said, doing everything right, if that is something that you align with, sometimes it might be that you needed to do everything right in order to receive love or to be loved or to stay loved, right? Not be alone, not end up alone, or to receive accolades that you were good enough. So that need or that belief, like I need to do everything right, is usually coming from survival mode. Like your body has been working so hard to keep you going. Your nervous system has been in survival for so long in fight or flight that that do I need to do everything right is usually coming from that. Like if I relinquish control, if I go a little bit more with the flow, if I rest, um, then I'm not going to survive, literally. Your nervous system does not feel safe to rest. So you have to do more, you have to be moving. You cannot rest, like really truly rest because you've got to be doing. You got to be doing and you've got to do it right. If you don't do it right, if it's not perfect, then you're falling short. You're failing. So I think this one's very, very important because it's a big sign of where you might still be in survival mode, and I see it as a one of the underlying beliefs that is associated with burnout. This is like perfectionism. This is the whole bit and the whole gamut, right? And if we want to get out of burnout, which by the way, on like a hair tissue mineral analysis, you can see it basically looks at like multiple months worth of like minerals and what is released from the body through the tissues. And so you can actually see if you are burned out, like literally, because the patterns that come through the hair are they can be associated with where your nervous system is, and it's one of my favorite things. And I do think it's really important. Actually, a recent test of mine unlocked something for me where I found this specific belief and realized that I had still kind of been in quite a bit in survival mode. So it really helped me see another layer behind like burnout and overwhelm and how we can get some like physical data, but also how it can unlock and open some doors for us too. Also, by the way, random tip, magnesium is, and many of our like vitamins and minerals kind of like blood tests can be really helpful, but for a lot of minerals, like the body tries to keep things as um, level as possible in the blood. So blood isn't really a great use or a great source for checking to see if we are deficient in certain vitamins and minerals because like magnesium, the body will get rid of a lot of it if it is turning through a lot of stress. So the adrenals will literally just like send magnesium out the door even if you're taking a lot of it and you need a lot of it. This is where, like, you could be supplementing and you could be actually doing everything right, but your body is doing something different because it's running on a pattern that it is in survival mode. And so it does specific things with that. So the magnesium that you're taking, you might not actually be absorbing, and it may not actually be doing anything for you. So this is where, again, I find it's the meld of the two worlds that really comes together and shines, because lots of people get blood tests that look like they're doing just fine and that everything's normal, but they are running on patterns that don't make any freaking sense with the labs that they have. And anyway, this is one way that we can gain a little more information as far as what's going on in the physical body that really really can help us out. So anyway, if you align with that, like the doing everything right, um, and you kind of always are in that doing mode and it is coming from survival mode, this is a really good place to start looking, and shifting that belief can be really, really, really powerful. And then giving your body the actual chance to rest. Okay, number three, if you hate your body, it won't feel safe enough to heal. This one really, I think, hits home for a lot of people if you've spent a lot of time, or maybe even grew up with parents who didn't like their body and they said it a lot. Maybe they were very, very critical of themselves. And so you kind of picked up on some of those patterns as well. And, I do say this a lot, like, you cannot heal a body that you hate. Your body will not feel safe to do that at all. And so I was reading a book. A good example of this is Dr. Gabor Mate's "When the Body Says No" is like one of the examples he gives in there is a woman with ALS. She uh, decided that she was going to find gratitude and love for every body part that she had. So every day she would pick a part of her body and she would find so much love and gratitude for just that part. So maybe it was like her fingers, maybe her hand, and then her forearm, right? So she would just like throughout the week, every day, just choose a different one, and she sort of like move through finding true, real love and gratitude, even though her body was breaking down, right? She healed. Such a powerful story. I've shared it like multiple times on this podcast because that is the power of the brain and the mind, and of gratitude and love. So if you hate your body, it's going to be very, very hard for your body to actually heal because it's not gonna feel safe. One of the things that I talk about a lot with like weight loss and why weight loss can feel so hard, and this is something that is really challenging sometimes for people. And I've spent like years working with some people on this to really find that unconditional love and that self-love and appreciation and joy for themselves, right? That I talk about how extra weight can be like a putting on like a parka, like a down jacket. So it like creates its own safety blanket. And when you finally release the emotions and all of the patterning and the programming and the beliefs that are there that make losing that weight so hard, because it literally is a protective blanket, the weight just evaporates. It just moves because the body finally feels safe enough to let it go. So if you're trying to heal a body that you are not appreciating because it's doing something, this goes along the lines of like when in my programs, I talk about one of the first steps is acceptance and awareness. Like, acceptance isn't giving up, it's not resignation, it's actually realizing that like whatever is here and happening is happening in many ways for you. Maybe something's happening to you, but it is also your responsibility to figure out how you're going to heal and move forward. Bad things happen all the time. How do we learn from it? How do we move forward and take our own personal responsibility for the journey? What is it here for us to learn from? And when you learn all of the pieces that are needed, that problem's going to that problem's going to evaporate. Now, as you move along, there's always going to be new problems. You're literally choosing new problems that you want to have. And if this is the one that we're working on, learning to really love your body and find deep gratitude for it is going to be a really, really powerful way to heal. And it's going to be needed and essential if you're, I used to hate my periods. I used to hate them. And so I had to learn to be okay. I had to learn to appreciate all of it. I had to learn to appreciate what the lessons were that it was there for me to learn. I completely forgot about that. I just remembered that now. Like I used to say, my God, I hate my periods. They were the worst. They were so painful. I constantly felt like it was like I was having to take so many like painkillers. It was just something, and then I was like, well, this is going to mess up my digestive system. It was just like this never-ending cycle of it just was horrible. Um, yeah, but it's finding it's actually healing what the root of what was creating that problem. Um, and it is finding this deep love and acceptance and awareness for what those patterns were that were driving that particular expression. Okay, number 4. Healing requires grieving who you had to be to survive. And this actually is just an offset of the third one, right? Which is that when we so I actually talked about this in the previous episode. When we are growing up between 0 and 8 years old, that's when your entire subconscious mind is formed. And then as adults, that is what is created. You are a walking, living version of whatever was learned between 0 and 8 years old as an adult. Yikes. But that's the truth. Okay. So what happens here then is that you had to learn what you needed to learn in order to survive. This is how your model of the world was developed and created. When you realize that anything that you want to believe is possible, like you are the one who decides what you want to believe, that's when things really open up, right? Because you are just a walking model of the world that is believing certain beliefs. Okay. So, but when you're a kid, we're basically walking around in hypnosis. Like you don't have filters. So you're just absorbing everything about your environment. And as you get exposed to life and as big things happen, big emotions happen, and if you don't, trauma, hard life things, picking up stress from like your parents, if they had financial stress or life stress, or maybe you moved and that created a whole lot of stress, right? So, career stress that like your parents were dealing with, all of these impact how your brain develops. All of them do. And then those show up as patterns when you become an adult. And if you don't know how to deal with something, especially like a big belief or something that happens to you that's really outside of your control, trauma, for example, you take on certain beliefs. They're usually limiting beliefs, but you take on certain beliefs that help you make sense of what happened. It is literally your brain's way of learning how to survive. So let's say you learn that you are not worthy or that you are not enough and that you are not capable, then that will eventually collect more things that represent that meaning. You will see the world through that lens and you will collect more and more and more experiences that reflect that specific belief. And then from there, that then creates problems as you go into adulthood and throughout your life until you learn. Now, of course, as you learn, you start choosing new problems, right? The deeper you go, that you get different problems, new layers. But it also goes back to the point that like we also choose our struggle. Like there's going to be hard things in life for sure, but we are choosing to actually struggle through it, which I think is a very interesting perspective shift when you really think about it. But I do believe that in some ways we do have to grieve the person, the part of us, the kiddo that had to believe something about themselves in order to survive. And that is a process. And you may find yourself going through the many layers of grief, grieving who you had to be. But it is really important. And it is a part of the journey. The fifth one, autoimmune or like just chronic symptoms and when they flare up or in constant flares, it can often be your body saying that this, whatever is happening currently, isn't working anymore. It's not working anymore. It's oftentimes a way, well, your body is always communicating with you, and this is in part how it communicates. It's just you're the one that's going to have to interpret what it means and in what area and in what way, right? So it might be that your body's saying, hey, this isn't working anymore, but it's not referencing something that is like happening in your body, like physically, like you're not eating food, the right foods or whatever. It could be that like your relationship isn't, something in your relationship isn't working. Like maybe you're not communicating, or maybe you're not having a need met, and you're also not asking to have that need yet met because you don't actually know what that need is, right? That need and that want. Like how many of us have just decided that like we don't even know what our wants and desires and needs are? Like that entire part of us is just whoop, gone away. Well, we got to find that first, right? We've got to figure out what it is that you want and that you need, and then we got to ask for it, right? And then that comes with its own things. But it might be that your body is actually communicating with you that there's an issue there, right? And it does need to have its needs met. Well, where is that going to start? It's got to start with you meeting your own needs first before we start asking anybody else to meet our own needs, to meet our needs. And I talked about this earlier, but I talked about this in the Worthy workshop so much because learning to meet your own needs rather than outsourcing them is a very powerful place to be and very empowering because when we are expecting other people to meet our needs for us, that puts so much load on and responsibility onto the other person that it burns them out, literally. This is why so many people's relationships will fail, is because they are literally expecting somebody else to meet the needs that weren't met from when they were a kid. And what really needs to happen is they need to heal that part so that now they can feel actually like that need is met for themselves first. And then it becomes so much easier, not just to ask for them, but for both sides to be able to meet each other's needs. Like a tennis court. You've got your own part of that tennis court up to the net, and they've got theirs. And you can give 100% of your 50%, and they can give 100% of their 50%. But we are not meant to be crossing over that line. We have to take care of what's going on our side of the court. That's important. That's really important. Because so much of what's going on in our external world is being created by what's going on in our internal world. So if your body is saying this isn't working anymore, it might be happening for many different reasons. But this is a really good way to like start with that. And also, it could be that you are forcing things in your life. It could be that you are doing a lot of things that aren't working. It could be that, this is just your body's way of saying, hey, this isn't in alignment with where you've said you wanted to be or where you want to go or what's in your highest potential, right? Your highest purpose. And so it's kind of sometimes the way that the universe or God or source, however you want to call it, your spirit, your soul is like guiding you and basically being like, hey, a little like very important, big nudge, right? They usually start really small and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just your body's way of communicating with you to say like, hey, something needs to change here. This isn't working anymore. And I do believe that the body will eventually force you to listen. It does eventually force you to like say no and to face your, anger or face your things. It's just you also obviously have a choice. And your body is calling you. This is one of the things I love medications because they really help people feel better in many ways, but I also have like a love-hate relationship with them as well because as much as they can be very helpful, they also help us bury it. I got a really good example of this the other day. So as I mentioned, like I don't have any endometriosis symptoms. Well, you might be new here. So I used to have endometriosis. I don't have endometriosis anymore. Um, I literally don't have symptoms. I do believe that I have healed that part of me, that caused those symptoms. I do have surgical, like literal evidence, that I did used to have it, but I don't have pain anymore. But I do sometimes still get migraines. And I just had a migraine recently. I've also been going through somewhat of a fairly stressful time. So it's just been a lot of learning and a lot of stretching and a lot of growing. And I got a migraine, and I realized that number one, it meant that for me, one of my patterns is that I will sometimes get migraines when cortisol drops. Some people will like they'll know what I mean by this because like every time the work week ends and the weekend begins, you get a migraine. It's a very common pattern with migraines. And so I saw it and I was like, oh, that's so good to see because that means that like this stressful period, like my body is finally shifting out of that, really just tough time. And so that was like for the first time ever, I was like, I was frustrated, but then I was also like, oh my gosh, this is so good because this means, that I'm getting out of that time and my body's healing. And I took some Advil basically like for the pain to try and just get a little more comfortable. But I noticed that I did actually go rest. I did. I went and took a nap. My husband took over for taking care of my daughter, and I just went and I took a nap and I just rested. I listened to like a healing thing, and just I did actually go and lay down. But what I noticed that the rest of the day and the day after is that I wanted, this is super interesting. So like I wanted my husband to be able to go and finish what the projects that he was working on. So I was like, go ahead, go take, I'll be fine. But I realized afterwards that as much as there was the part of me that wanted him to go do that, I also should have asked for him to just stick around and to like help with dinner and those things. Because what ended up happening is I took a medication to help with the pain, and then I got back into doing mode. And so this is my point is that I have a love-hate relationship with medications because on one hand, they are so helpful because they help you feel better, but on the other hand, they do help you feel better, and then you ignore what they were what they're here for you to do or to learn. So like for if you didn't have that medication, like what would you be doing right now? Like with a migraine, I would be literally in bed, like or on the couch, just like resting. I would not be doing anything because it hurts. It's painful. Um, and as much as we sometimes don't want to rest and we don't want to, do those things, that's what those symptoms are there for. They are literally forcing you to learn and to do something, but we just don't want to do it. Um, Sometimes we like lose our jobs. Sometimes like things in life happen, but then in hindsight, you realize that had you not lost your job, you might have continued on in the same pattern. And it was because you lost your job that you actually got time to rest and to heal. And you did actually heal. I don't know. It might seem like it's a horrible thing that's happening at that time, but it could be that your highest self is guiding you in a way because you said you wanted to heal, and so this is part of how you do it. Even if it might create, other stressors in other parts or financial stress or whatever. Anyway, it's all dependent on the person, right? It's really hard to say like that this is going to be the thing for everyone because it is so specific to and individualized and unique to every single person. But I just think these things are really important because it is about your journey. And so when we have symptoms, when I say that it's your body saying this isn't working anymore, I just think that it's really important because we also need to consider it is good for you to feel better because then it means you're going to do some of the other things that help you heal. And at the same time, it can be very easy to get back into old patterns or to not be like really listening to what your body's calling for, and not rest and not take the time off that is needed in order for your body to heal. Um, Very common with athletes. So common with athletes, right? And high achievers because you have so much to do. So there might actually be a need to slow down. There might actually need to soften. There might actually be a need to like rest, to actually practice in real time. What does it look like to go for a very slow stroll? Like super slow. That was really hard for me. I tend to walk very quickly, trying to get from point A to point B as fast as possible because I have a lot to do. I have a lot to get done. So when it comes to really slowing down, I find that it's actually very helpful for me to like do the dishes slowly and to um, take very slow walks. Like my kiddo has really helped me with that quite a bit. Like I have to take very, very slow walks and actually stop and look at things I get to. And it is really, really awesome. And I've seen so many things that I haven't seen. I've seen things from different perspectives that I haven't seen. It's just really, there's a lot of things around us that when we're rushing and busy and just going through the motions that we miss. And that's what I think sometimes these health journeys can really give us is this like they do oftentimes have opportunities and things that can benefit us. Also if you're struggling to have a kid, right? Preconception and conception, there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of expansion, there's a lot of stretching that can often happen during that time. And we can see it as such a painful time because you want that so badly, but it can also be such a powerful opportunity to really dig through some of those beliefs and those layers. And what I really do believe is true is that when you work through those things, it's actually preparing you to be a better parent. And or it's preparing you for something even better if for some reason you can't have kids. So anyway, I kind of got off topic there. But I think these are all really important things to keep in mind. And obviously there's many more, but these are just a couple that really stood out to me as really important. And so if any of these really hit home, if they really landed with you and were just like, okay, yeah, like this is absolutely me. I just want to say and remind you that you're not broken and there's nothing to fix and there's nothing to overcome, because your body is very, very wise. And all it's really doing is it's just asking you to start listening differently. So that's the end. This is it. If you're feeling like, it's time to start looking at this differently. It's time to heal from the inside out, looking at your nervous system, looking at those subconscious patterns and really taking it from that perspective first, and then allowing for the other physical, like functional medicine, body things, or any other actions that you need to take in your life to get what you want. Taking that aligned action comes from doing that, making sure your body feels safe. And then also the subconscious patterns and work, which often come hand in hand, but doing both of those things, then there's multiple different ways to work with me. I'll have the link in the show notes. But this might be a good next step for you, is just going and taking a deep dive, a little bit deeper into really what's going on and some of these deeper patterns that are oftentimes a part of these just health journeys that we end up on. So all right. Thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. It helps me out. It helps get this show out to more people. And if you really, really liked it, if you could share it out on your channels, social media, or just share it with a friend, that this might resonate with, that would be super, super helpful and very, very awesome. If you resonated with something, last piece, if you resonated with anything that really was like, oh my gosh, like like, I had never seen it that way. This is such an aha moment or breakthrough. I would love it if you would leave a comment and let me know. I do read them. And so I would like to respond to you if any of these resonate. So, or you can come hang out with me and find me on Instagram and message me there as well. So, all right. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Take care. Did you know that close to 90% of illnesses are stress related? Burnout doesn't just make you tired, it quietly breaks down your immune system, your hormones, and even your emotional resilience. And not only are high achieving women wired to burn out, but it's also affecting every area of your life, including taking your health down with it. You're likely doing everything, and maybe even feel that you've been doing everything right. Eating healthy, taking all the supplements, doing the workouts, resting, delegating, removing things from your schedule, even the mindset work. But if you're still feeling anxious for no reason, exhausted even after a full night's sleep, feeling numb but wired, or like something has to change, but you just don't quite know what, your body is telling you that this is not a surface level problem. That's why I created the Calm Code. It's a free 5-minute guided meditation to help you interrupt those mental spirals, soothe the stress behind your symptoms, and reset the deeper patterns that are keeping you in burnout, even when you're doing everything right. And you'll also get a bonus meditation to shift the root behaviors and beliefs and patterns that are driving your burnout. So the change doesn't just feel good, it actually sticks. There's no journaling, no prep, just sit back, listen, and let your body exhale. Because true recovery doesn't come from doing more. It comes from taking out the patterns that are keeping you stuck. And this is where it starts. Go to the link in the show notes and get the Calm Code for free.